Carrie, I noticed that the last agenda item is projected cost and timeline, but I'm looking, and that is not in this packet, but it's in the next packet. So if Tim and John want to cover that now, we should, they need to refer to the open packet, or we can wait and discuss that with the,
We gotta cover what we had on the agenda.
okay, we can,
Duty to do that.
Carrie has that in front of her, I just want
I
to
don't
make sure
know
you
if-
guys have it in front
I
of you.
actually don't
Or you
have it
could
in
just-
front of me. I need to get it out of my,
Okay.
I don't have a hard copy of that.
It will be on the overhead, Mary Ann, if you go to the open session. It's also part of the Carrie's MOU, that's why I
Just
think we did.
Go to the schedule that shows what the costs are, Mary Ann. You'll see it when you forward up.
It's on page 11. So this is the
The
timeline.
Yes, that we created, and you can see the kind of the things that we've currently executed, going through what we've discussed to date, and here's where we are in August, and we've received proposals for soil borings. We did not begin tennis court drawings, so we're still waiting to hear what the result of the negotiations would be, so that is on hold. We will be doing roof course next week, provided we get the go-ahead to do this. Soil borings will happen next week regardless. That has been contracted. And then we'll be moving forward to understand more of the stormwater management and what that might mean as we move forward, and exactly figure out how to mitigate that with our design. We have a concept that needs all to be calculated and worked out per the law. And so what we ideally like to do with this timeline is receive bids as we move into the beginning of the year. And if you should contemplate talking about a construction manager, that would, obviously that timeline would fall in line with what they might want you to do as well. So that is the goal if we want to construct in 2015. If that is not the case, then we can loosen up on what we're proposing here. But the goal would be to finish construction by August of 2015.
So basically, we're going April 1st through August 1st.
As soon as possible. Because there's a lot of work to be done, and we want to inconvenience the school and all the sport programs as little as possible, and so we want to consolidate as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, our IHSA events open up the third week of August, and we don't have anywhere else to really play unless we do off-site, at some of the parks. We'll have to do some of that in the spring. We'll have to do some off-site soccer, and we already do baseball and softball off-site. In the event that this gets slow or we don't start it right away in April, obviously we can we'll have the potential to possibly have a contest or two at home, but for the most part, we should be preparing everybody that April through August is when we need to attack the product, because that only gives us 4 months.
Mm-hmm. So the sooner we receive go ahead, the better, because we need to really start honing in on what the exact scope of work is.
Okay.
That's a realistic timeline if you went from April 1st to August 31st, 5 months?
It is. It's still, it's tight, but so school construction is tight.
Okay. Could you flip down to the page, Mary Ann, that has there's listed what the
So I don't know if
estimated
it's
cost
before or
would
after
be.
that, Tim.
It's farther down.
You got comments
Oh,
on
no,
there?
no, go up.
Other way, Mary
Go
Ann.
the other way, I'm sorry.
It's on page 9. There you go.
So like I mentioned earlier, there's two options, and there's a cost, potential cost for what a 6-lane track option would be, and then what a 7-lane track option would be. And the first one that we're looking at here is the 6-lane, and that does not include redoing the base of the existing track. And we'll not know that until we get the soil borings back. So again, this is very tentative, but it gives us a picture of where we're at right now and the best that we can understand to date. So this includes all the improvements that I've mentioned earlier. It does not include any stormwater or flooding mitigation on the east side of Gulf Road. Nor does it include any changes of lighting above the track.
And these are general approximations.
They are.
I mean, obviously, the original stadium building that we had in there was 8,900 square feet. We're down to 5,600 or 6,000 square feet.
Right,
So, I mean,
right. So this needs to be updated as we move forward, but really, we've just kind of been designing along and changing those things as we move forward, and this will need to get updated as we hit our next level.
And we're gonna talk about this in more detail at the meeting, but of course, everybody's concern is that it's not gonna exceed. So we get a little concerned when we say it's gonna update as we go along. We talked about different alternatives. You know, how comfortable are we gonna be that, you know,
I'm
at
very
least the
comfortable with
design
these
is-
numbers when
Okay.
we're talking about what's already on the drawings, but when we're
Okay.
talking about adding things to them,
Okay.
that's when I become uncomfortable with what
Okay.
we've presented. So that's when I talked about cost control and a budget number, that's what we need to define.
Okay.
I mean, like adding new lights, I think that would be a significant increase, correct?
It is.
Adding a new track will be a new increase.
The new
Show
base.
that.
Mhm.
Right.
And the next and then if you scroll to the next, the 7-lane option, we've already included the new base for the track. And so you can see
Go down a little bit more.
you can see the total at the
Total.
bottom. It's all the same line items except for that 7-lane track, but you can see that it's a higher number and probably around $500,000 more, something like that. Again, it's all related to the base of the track.
When do the soil borings come back?
Well, they'll be out next week to actually auger.
Okay.
But due to some obstacles on the existing site, power lines, the field and games, and making sure that it gets corrected and repaired after they do it. They have to hand auger, which they can't use their drilling machines, so it takes a little bit longer. So that's something that is going to take, the process is going to take a little bit longer. But it's in motion, and that's the important part. We're going to get data back as soon as possible.
How deep does it go?
They're various lengths or depths, and the biggest one is 15 feet. There's 10 and there's 5. And it's depending on what improvement is above it.
So you've covered everything you conceivably need to cover in terms of the borings.
Well, I mean, ideally, there's a point of no return on how many borings you can do. We could spend tens of thousands of dollars to understand the geotechnical.
Well, I guess my question is in terms of that little green area, is that important? The current green space where they throw the discus to know what's back there?
Yeah, we haven't put anything over there, but we have underneath the tennis court, by the tennis courts and around there, and where that potentially new concession stand would go, and above,
Okay, just-
underneath the buildings that were the proposed buildings, and then also underneath the existing, on the sides of the existing bleachers. I know there was a question asked about penetrating the floor structure of the existing stadium, but we're going to get just as relevant soil borings next to it. We could, though. I mean, it's just more money, what you're spending up
We don't wanna
front.
spend money just
No.
to spend money.
Right.
If you think what we have is gonna do the trick.
As much as it can.
There's a fine balance.
There is a fine balance. I mean, we've had where we've done soil borings and 10 feet over we find something completely different below the soil. But this site is not. It has been worked on before, so there should be some consistency there.
So I guess the last question I'd like to ask, I know there'll be more questions when we have our committee of the whole. As we're finalizing and the whole board gets to weigh in the community comments, we weigh in on, exactly what we would do with parking or exactly what we would do with the tennis courts. Because those aren't gonna largely be affect what we do with the stadium, the stands, the track. We can continue to, if the board decides to approve proposal you have to get going here, we still have time to finalize what we would do with the tennis court and the parking, since Dr. Skinkis is still trying to work something out with the zoo also in the county. But we have a limited amount of time. I mean, otherwise we're gonna keep spending money on putting drawings together, right?
That's correct.
So-
But yes, there is some flexibility there with those in particular. You know, obviously the buildings are gonna take, and the flood mitigation, we need to get that together as soon as possible. There comes a point in time when the parking lot and the tennis courts are gonna play a role with the storm water management that we need to do calculations for, so
Mhm.
that will be relevant. But if we can resolve the tennis court and parking issue in the not-too-distant future, it should be fine.
Okay.
Jason, this is the first time you presented. Do you have any? Welcome to the RB project.
Thank you.
Trying to put a lot into a little. So, do you have any outside perspective on anything that we're talking about, or things that we need to be considering that weren't mentioned tonight?
No, I think we covered it really well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else you want to cover, Jen?
Jason, I'm glad you're on
Business
board.
Okay, thank you.
Kevin?